Hi, welcome to our channel, Check Globe. Today we will talk about good sustainable practices and the connection between climate change and democracy. Let's begin. Do you have any examples of good practices for sustainability on the state level?
I think there were quite a few countries that really took the initiative around increasing, for example, cycling infrastructure. So, the Netherlands, where it just doesn't occur to most people to get in a car to go to work. You get on your bike, that's what you do. Paris, for example, has seen a huge transformation post-COVID. During the COVID lockdowns, they took the opportunity to create the infrastructure. And when the lockdowns were over, they found that endured, that people remained cycling and taking active transport measures rather than driving and clogging up the streets. And I think that these are really positive ways of doing things. It's about providing the infrastructure to enable people to make a sustainable decision, to cycle, to walk. And the way that they've done that is to deconstruct the infrastructure for cars. So they have taken over car streets to put in cycle lanes and protected cycle lanes so that people feel safe. They've provided safe places to park your bike so that you can leave it for the day, go and work and come back and know that it's not been stolen. These kinds of measures, I think, are really proactive and extremely sustainable. They give people, they incentivize people to do the sustainable thing. I think my nearest town to where I live has started trying to do some of these things as well, which is wonderful. So there's like a bike tower at the station where I can park my bike when I go and get on the train to get into work in the morning. There's a cycleway out to my village. There's electric bike sharing schemes throughout the city. But what they've forgotten to do is then get rid of the car infrastructure. So yes, you can do all of your cycling, but you're going to do battle with the cars to do it. There's no protected cycleways. There's free car parking all around the city. So it really, at the same time as trying to promote cycling, it also incentivizes driving or doesn't disincentivize driving. So some of the best measures that I've seen at a state level have been those that have increased the incentives to do something sustainable at the same time as decreasing the incentives to do something unsustainable. And those are good positive steps that are being taken.
When we're talking about sustainability, is there any connection to democracy?
There's lots of connections, and I can answer this question in a number of ways. There are critical questions that we need to think about as scientists. The temptation as scientists is to say, climate change is here. You need to do this, this, and this to combat climate change. And there's a tendency amongst us to say, okay, policy should be led by the science, listen to the scientists, make your policies based on what we are telling you. That's quite sort of technocentric, right? Like the scientists know best, you must listen to us. But we do live in a democracy, and I personally want to keep living in a democracy. I believe in this way of organising society. And so we also have to think that actually there are ways that decisions should be made. There are ways that we elect our decision makers. And to then just come in and say, okay, science tells you need to do it this way, is also there's a bit of a tension there with the way that democracy works. Because actually, when we're talking about climate change and biodiversity loss, yes, the science is clear that it's happening. So yes, absolutely, listen to the science, climate change is here, we need to act. But then we get to the point of action, and what action we take, that is a more political question. We have a whole range of options about what we can do about climate change. We can take these sort of technocratic approaches of saying, okay, electric mobility, carbon capture and storage, etc., etc. Or we can take a pathway of saying, okay, let's close down certain industries, let's regulate, let's tax, let's make sure that these polluting industries can't do what they're doing. And or we can take a path of saying, okay, as a society, we need to think about better social infrastructure, social provisioning, so that we're not asking people to travel in a certain way, so that people aren't consuming all the time. So we have these different pathways and options of the way that we can act. And so it's not actually, climate policy isn't as simple as just saying, listen to the science. It's, well, what science do we listen to about what options? And that then is a question of politics and decision making about where we want our society to go and what we want that to look like. And I can have informed opinions on the fact that I do not like this technocentric approach of let's just deal with the carbon emissions and keep going on the pathway that we're going and find new technologies. But actually that's not my decision to make. I am one person in a society. So what we need to think about as a society is how we do make the decisions and how these different inputs and options are given to our policymakers so that they can make that decision, so that they can think critically. And at the moment, we just have a system of saying, okay, listen to the science, you've got to act on climate change. And we don't really have anything that allows them to engage with these options of, okay, well, what does that mean? I'm listening to the science, I know there's a problem, now what? And actually, we're so trapped in this system of sort of this economics and politics being so intricately coupled that we spoke about earlier, that actually that's closed off these other options. There is only this sort of industrial consumption pathway to go on, and the other options don't get any listening to, they don't get any consideration. There is only this pathway. And so to me, climate change is a societal problem. It's also a challenge to our democracy. We have to think about, okay, this narrow way where politics and economics are closely entwined is not allowing us to consider the full range of options that we've got on the table here. So how do we stretch that? How do we put these options in a democratic way to have them aired within the democratic system so that we can make informed decisions that are fair and just to society? And so really, when I'm talking about systems transformations for sustainability, I'm talking about changing societies, but I'm also talking about thinking how we do this in a democratic way, how we change the democratic system so that we can think about the kinds of options that are on the table for climate change.
Okay, thank you. When we are talking about your personal experience on being more sustainable in your life choices, what are the examples of your decisions that you made?
It's a good question, and I think the decisions that I make in life are quite a good example of how we're constrained by certain systems. So for example, I do live in a village. There is no bus service to my village. There is no shop in my village. And so most people do just drive everywhere because what else are you going to do? I do make a very conscious decision that when I travel into Prague to go to the office, I cycle from my house to the train station and I take the train and then do the same on the way back again. But I completely understand why the vast majority of people in my village don't do this. And most of them do travel into the nearest town or then on into Prague by driving, because that's where the good jobs are. And it's, yeah, you can drive within about 40 minutes, whereas my commute takes me an hour and a half from door to door. So it really does have to be a conscious decision for me, and I completely understand why other people do not make that decision. So that's quite a good example, I think, of, okay, I can make these micro decisions, but everybody's constrained by the broader system. But what I also realised, for example, when I took this job and I started leading the Department of Human Dimensions, was that I take on different roles in my life. So there's my personal life and the personal decisions I make, like cycling to the station and taking the train. But there's also situations in my life where I have the opportunity to help incentivize other people or unlock changes for a broader range of people. And so one of those roles, for example, is leading the department. And in the department, I can then open up conversations with people about our travel behaviours. So, for example, which conferences are we going to this year? Where are they and how are we getting there? Do we all need to go? If we are running such and such an event, what kind of food do we have at that event? Or do we really need everything in individual packaging? We also, for example, have a cleaning firm that uses ecological products in the office. So for me, it's quite a nice example of, in the different roles in my life, I have different ways of creating sustainability change in myself and in other people that I come into contact with. And you asked me earlier about what can we all do, and I think that this is a really powerful thing that people can do, is really look at the different opportunities that you have, the different roles that you play in your life, and what kinds of, where are you making decisions just for you, and where are you making decisions that can help other people make more sustainable decisions as well. So for example, through school boards, community meetings that we talked about, when can you be the person that unlocks those changes for other people?